Welcome back, everyone. It's good to see you in the house of God, and a very good morning. Today is, as we know, is Father's Day. It's a time of appreciation, a time where we want to, celebrate our fathers. We want to uplift them up. And usually in Mother's Day, right, the mothers get a lot of love. They get a lot of attention, they get flowers, they go to a restaurant. You know what happens during Father's Day? A few days ago, I learned from Pastor Chua this phrase. He said, 母亲节上馆子餐馆，父亲节开罐子 can. Okay? So Mother's Day go restaurant, Father's Day open canned food. Is that true? No, right? Today I hope you all are bringing the fathers to a good place, a good restaurant. All right? But sometimes maybe we don't appreciate our fathers enough. They do so much work behind the scenes, protecting, providing for the family, leading, praying for the family without expecting much recognition. So today I want to take this opportunity to recognize the fathers among us, to appreciate and affirm them as well. So if you don't mind, if you're a father, maybe you could just rise to your feet and we can just, we can just appreciate you. Who are the fathers among us? Okay, let's appreciate them. Thank you. So, I think Mel did such a good job with the Mother's Day sermon. How many of you were blessed by the sermon? Okay, it was a good sermon that I think impacted the mothers. And maybe she should have been here preaching for this Father's Day sermon. But I thought it was a good sermon, so I just took her sermon title. Okay, and then I made it my own. Sorry, not very original. So today I have The Legacy of Fathers, a tale of two fathers. But these two fathers are a bit different from the mothers in Mel's sermon. The mothers in Mel's sermon, they were good, godly women, right? They were women who loved the Lord, and they taught us about motherly love. On the contrary, the fathers that I want to talk about today, instead of complementing each other, they kind of form a contrast. The Bible sets them up as a foil, as a contrast. And by the way I'm talking about them, you would think that, okay, maybe one is a godly man, he worships God. The other father is maybe a godless pagan who does not know God. And because of that, the legacies that they leave behind for their children, the impact that they have on their families, and even beyond is vastly different. That's about half true. Because the truth of the matter is that the Bible actually calls both fathers righteous men. In fact, both of them come from the same family, they were related. Both of them have experienced God. Both of them traveled together. Both of them were very wealthy and successful, but despite all their similarities and all their commonalities, all their shared experiences, but in the end, because of the paths that they chose, because of the choices that they made, and because of the outcomes that came from these choices, it resulted in very different, in fact, diametrically opposite legacies. The impact and the influence that they left behind could not be more different because of the choices that they made. And these legacies extended even to the generations that followed them. One was the friend of God. The other couldn't convince his son-in-laws that God's judgment was coming. One interceded for a wicked city. The other barely escaped it. One was willing to offer up his son to God. The other offered up his daughters to the mob. One became the father of Israel and a blessing to the nations. The other, the father of the Ammonites and the Moabites, who became enemies of Israel. One left behind a legacy of faith, and the other a legacy of compromise and regret. Anyone wants to hazard a guess which two fathers I'm talking about? Yeah, that's right. Abraham and Lot. You guys read your Bibles. Okay, so their story begins in Genesis 13:1. And we read of them. So Abraham went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abraham had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. From the Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier and where he had first built an altar. There Abraham called on the name of the Lord. Now, Lot, who was moving about with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. So Abraham said to Lot, "Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The two men parted company. Abraham lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. Then Lot said to Abraham after Lot had parted from him, "Look around you," the Lord, said to Abraham after Lot had parted from him. "Look around from where you are to the north and the south, to the east and the west. All the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you." So Abraham went to live near the great trees of Merim at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord. Okay, so as we can see, there were actually many similarities between Abraham and Lot. Lot is Abraham's nephew. At this point, he's Abraham, not Abraham yet. So Lot is Abraham's nephew. They were from the same family. They were raised in the same household. They received the same teachings about God. In fact, at this point in the story, Abraham had received the call from God to leave his hometown and go to the promised land. So as we read in Genesis 13, Abraham is midway to the promised land. He's on his way there. And has it occurred to you, Abraham is on his way to the promised land as the Lord had called him. But what is Lot doing with him? Why is Lot with Abraham? Because God's call was given to Abraham, not Lot. But when Abraham obeyed God and left everything behind, Lot went with him. So in other words, Lot must have either been influenced by his uncle, or he trusted his uncle so much, or he himself had a certain faith in God, in God's promises, that he believed that this God is real and that this God has truly called Abraham. Otherwise, why would he leave his hometown? He would say, "Abraham, uncle, you are crazy. I'm not going to join you." And in the process of following Abraham, Lot must have himself witnessed the same miracles. He must have witnessed God's protection. He must have witnessed God's provision. He must have enjoyed the similar blessings as Abraham just by virtue of believing and following him. In other words, this Lot guy, he's no pagan, okay? He's no godless barbarian. In fact, 2 Peter calls him a righteous man. And he says that Lot was actually distressed by the ungodliness of Sodom and Gomorrah, where he was staying. He was distressed by the sinfulness of the people in that nation. And so in today's vernacular, you would say, actually, this Lot, he's born again. He's a Christian because he's a righteous man, because of his faith. And he was in fact affected by sin that was going all around him. Yet in the end, his legacy is far different from his uncle's legacy. And the reason for that starts right at the beginning. Because right at the beginning, you can see their differences start to emerge. Yes, both of them had grown immensely wealthy. God had blessed them so much that the land could not contain their wealth. So in those days, it's not about having a bigger bank account, but if you're a wealthy man, you have a lot of livestock. And the more livestock you have, the more servants you need to take care of the livestock. And the more livestock and the more servants that you have, the more land you need to grow your wealth. So at some point in time, the land could not support both of them because both of them were so wealthy. So this is where the differences start to show up, because they had to split. And when Lot chose the land, he saw the whole plain of Jordan. He saw it was well watered. He saw it was like Egypt. And he said, okay, that's where I'm going to go, because it's the only place where I can continue to get richer. It's a fertile land. There's enough space for my livestock. I'm going to get richer there. It didn't really matter to him that he was moving near Sodom, where there was a sinful people. It didn't matter that he was moving away from the land of Canaan, which is the promised land that God had promised to Abraham. Abraham, on the other hand, he received the promises of God by faith, and through eyes of faith, he looked at the land, north and south, east and west, and all that he could see God promised he would possess. And so he believed. And so he was first reliant on God, And through eyes of faith, he relied on God rather than through what he could see. Okay? So, somehow you must consider that Abraham is actually Lot's uncle. So in those days, especially as a senior, you had every right to, put his foot down and say, I get first dibs. I get to choose the land first. But he let Lot choose the land because Abraham trusted God's promises. Okay? So the question is it wrong to want to have more money? And is it wrong to want to get your finances in order? And is it wrong to want to be successful? Of course not. As a father especially, I think many of you know there's a responsibility for you, a calling for you to provide for your families. And that's actually a good thing. And actually, by many measures today, Lot is a good father, right? He is a well-respected man by his community. He was successful. He provided for his family above and beyond. He was a wise man. He knew how to see opportunities and take advantage of them. And so by many measures, we would say, well, this Lot, he's a good guy, he's a good Christian, he's a good father. But the problem was that in all that Lot did, he saw, he evaluated, he chose, but nowhere are we told that he prayed, or that he sought God's direction, or that he built an altar, or that he called upon the name of the Lord. And the narrative makes it very clear for us that when it comes to Abraham, because right at the start we read that Abraham came to Negev where he had first built an altar, and in verse 4 it says that he called on the name of the Lord. And then almost like a way to reinforce this point, right at the end of the narrative, at the end of the chapter, we read again, Abraham built an altar to the Lord. Nowhere do we read Lot doing any of these things, but Abraham was a man who would call on the name of the Lord. He was a man who would build altars unto the Lord, who would trust in the promises of God. You see, this man Abraham, he was a seeker of God. Over any land, over any finances, over any success, he would seek God above all else. And that was the difference between both men. Both were righteous, both were rich men, both knew the ways of the Lord from young, both of the same lineage and the same generational blessings, but they have very different impacts and very different legacies. Isn't that so? Remember, Abraham and Lot for very different things. What is the first story that comes to mind when you think about Abraham? Isaac, right? Yeah, some of you are muttering Isaac. We remember Abraham and Lot for very different things. And Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son in obedience to the Lord. Genesis 22. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. And so Abraham obeyed. He actually obeyed. Right, at this point, he's called Abraham. Early morning, he got up, he saddled his donkey, he took Isaac up to the mountain, and just as Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, we all know how the story ends. God intervened, and he provided a ram in place of Isaac. And so Isaac's life was preserved. And this is what the Lord said in response to Abraham's obedience. He said, do not lay your hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. You see, Abraham was a rich man. He had money, but the money didn't have him. He had riches, but he held it loosely, and he was willing to sacrifice not just riches, even the son that he loves, to the Lord, because he treasured God above all else. He obeyed God above everything else. He held God in the highest esteem over anything else. He honored and revered God before anyone else. And the Bible sums up this with a simple but profound phrase, and it says, Abraham feared the Lord. Fathers, you have a great responsibility. I don't imagine to know what kind of mantle that you carry because I'm not a father myself, but you have a great calling. And as important as providing and protecting your family may be, the highest calling that God has placed on your life is to leave not just an earthly inheritance, but a spiritual inheritance, to leave a faith that is worth inheriting, a faith that fears the Lord, a faith that will call upon the Lord in any situation, a faith that will revere and honor God before anything or anyone else. The problem with Lot was not that he wanted to get better or more successful. The problem with Lot was not that he knew nothing about God. The problem with Lot was that his desires had a stronger hold on him than the fear of the Lord. The problem was not that Lot had a lot of money, but that the money had a lot of him. Lot would choose his ambition over God's promises. He would choose Sodom over the promised land, and he would make decisions that would ultimately result in compromise and even devastation. As they say, one thing led to another. Lot, who eventually, he initially moved near Sodom, and as you read the story, soon he was inside the city itself, and before you know it, he was sitting at the gates of Sodom, which means he was a man of influence in that community. And the Bible is clear on this. Sodom was a wicked place, and if Lot feared the Lord, he would have weighed not just its riches, but also the spiritual dangers of living there. Right? He would have brought it before the Lord. And this is what happens. Because Lot put his ambition above God's wisdom, and because Lot feared man more than he feared God, when God sent 2 angels, and they were in human form, and they came to Lot's house, the men of Sodom noticed. They noticed these 2 men. Maybe these 2 angels were very handsome. Who knows, right? I mean, if I were an angel, I become a human, I may not become an ugly guy. So maybe they're very handsome. But anyway, the men of Sodom from all around the city, young and old, the Bible tells us, they have become so perverse, they have become so dark in their sexuality that they wanted to come and have sex with these angels, men and men, okay? So they came to the house of Lot, they surrounded the house, and they demanded, Lot, where are the 2 men? Bring them out because we want to have sex with them. And this was a violent and motley crew, and they were threatening to bang down the door on Lot's house. And under such great pressure, how did Lot respond? He said this, No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Are you crazy, Lot? What are you thinking? You see, in those days, hospitality was a very sacred thing. And so likely to Lot in those days, protecting his guests was more important than protecting his daughters. Or maybe because they were angels, I don't know. But whatever it is, Lot abandoned his fatherly duties in the face of pressure. He feared men more than he trusted God. And so he made compromise. He made compromises that he would have never thought he would have made, that was previously unthinkable. 2 righteous men, 2 righteous fathers, the Bible says. One would offer his son to the Lord. The other would offer his daughters to a perverse and godless mob. Why? Because one feared the Lord and the other did not. So fathers, today, if you forget everything that I said, just remember this. The most important thing you can do for your children and for your family is to fear the Lord. The greatest legacy a father can leave for his family is to fear the Lord. You forget everything, you just remember this. Anyway, I only have 1 point. It's this point. Okay? The most important thing you can leave as a great inheritance for your posterity and the generations to follow is to have a faith that fears the Lord. Now, what does it mean, however, to fear the Lord? I think it's a bit helpful to have some clarification here. Because sometimes we hear the word fear and we think, I'm a bit afraid of God. But to fear the Lord doesn't mean to be afraid of God. But it means there is a reverential awe of God. Remember when God brought the Israelites out of Egypt, led by Moses, and he brought them to Mount Sinai, and he appeared to the Israelites in great thunder and lightning, and there was smoke, and the whole mountain was shaking, and the people were trembling in fear because God was showing his awesomeness, his glory to the people. And then Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning. But the people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. So here again we see a contrast. Moses feared the Lord. He revered God. He honored God. He walked with the Lord and he held God in high esteem. And because Moses feared God, he was able to draw near to God. But because the people did not fear God, they were merely afraid of God. And because they were afraid, they stood at a distance. Isn't that interesting? The one who fears the Lord draws near, where the one who is afraid of God draws away. So the fear of the Lord is not the same thing as being afraid of God. Being afraid of God causes us to hide, to avoid Him, to run away, to keep our distance. But the holy fear of the Lord is a reverential awe that draws us to Him and keeps us away from sin. So as you consider these things, and when you find that this fear of the Lord, and you consider the holiness of God, and you find yourself wanting to run away, then maybe, there are elements of being afraid of the Lord. But the holy fear of God is the one that makes you want to run away from sin and makes you want to draw near into God's presence, because you realize how great and how awesome and how in awe you are of Him. And there is a reverential awe that comes from that. So this is one element of what it means to fear the Lord. There is a reverence, there is an awe because of His holiness, because of His majesty, and it causes you to want to honor and to worship Him, okay? And even to draw near into His presence. Now, another element of the fear of the Lord is one of humble gratitude. Psalms 130 says, "But with you there is forgiveness, that you may be feared." Now think about that for a moment. If fearing God meant being afraid of God, then this verse wouldn't really make sense, right? Why would you be afraid of the person that forgives you? Imagine you have done a great wrong to a king, and he has every right by the law to put you to death. But instead of that, he forgives you, he absolves you of his crime. He says, I release you, you have no debt anymore. And what would your response to that king be? You would be immensely grateful, right? You would throw yourself at his feet. You would have great relief, great thankfulness, and great humility. And would you not be amazed at his mercy and his kindness, at his grace? And you would say, this is a good king. This is a great king, and I subject myself to him. I am humbled, and I revere him. This is how the NIV translates this verse. It says, with you there is forgiveness, so that we can with reverence serve you. So the fear of the Lord is not to be afraid of him. But when we think of the fear of the Lord, yes, we think of his greatness. That will produce reverential awe. But we should also think of his goodness, his kindness, his mercy, and his grace and favor and faithfulness. That's what we sang just now. Right? The goodness of God that follows us. And the response is that I want to surrender everything to you because, God, you are good. So even as we consider his greatness, we also consider his goodness. And that goodness will produce in us also reverence of a different kind, a reverence of humble gratitude that moves you to want to worship the Lord and serve him with thankfulness. And there is a third element of the fear of the Lord, and it's one of loving delight. It's a bit paradoxical, but it's one of loving delight. And Deuteronomy 10 tells us, now Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. You see, to fear the Lord is to love the Lord. Deuteronomy doesn't make a huge distinction. I think sometimes we tend to dichotomize loving and fearing. And we will say, to love the Lord, you want to treasure him, you want to delight in him, you want to desire him. But to fear the Lord, there's going to be some distance. There's going to be some obligation. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's going to keep me from sin. But it seems to me that the more I study the scriptures and as I think through these things, I'm starting to think that fearing and loving the Lord are really two sides of the same coin. And you can't really separate the two. Let me give you an illustration now. Fathers, how many of you love your wives? I think most hands should go up. Better go up, okay? Better go up. Do not sleep on the couch. Okay, the rest of you, hands didn't go up because your hand was around your wife already, right? Loving her. Now, when you love your wives, do you not do all kinds of sweet things for her, right? Hand around shoulder, tell her she's beautiful, bring her flowers, make her coffee? No, Yeah. Or whatever ways you show love to her, right? But through all these sweet gestures, it's not just enough to show that you love her. If you truly love her, you will take into consideration her thoughts and her feelings. You will make changes and accommodations to work things out with her. You will find ways to please her and time to spend with her. Basically, she will be a priority to you and a priority on your heart. But if a man says, I love my wife, and he buys her all kinds of expensive gifts for her, he does all kinds of things, but he doesn't listen to her. When she's speaking, he will just get on his phone. After every argument, he will bring flowers to her, but he doesn't try to make any changes or try to talk things out, to work things out, to work things out so that they can live well together. When he makes decisions, right, he has no consideration for her desires or her feelings or her opinions. Now, would you say that this man loves his wife? Who said that? Marcus, Marcus, would you like to come and explain? Okay, later we will spend some time praying. SP will pray for you. Okay, I think we need to pray for Sam. I think most of us who are sane and have common sense, kidding, would say that this man doesn't love his wife. Even though he does a lot of things for her, but he doesn't honor or respect or hold her in high esteem. In the same way, when we say we love Jesus, it's not just doing a lot of things for him, serving in church, doing ministry, but Jesus himself said, if you love me, you will obey my commands. If we truly love the Lord, we will care about what pleases him. We will desire to honor him, and he will become the priority of our lives. He will become the priority of our hearts. And when he speaks, we listen. When he commands, we obey. When he convicts, we repent. Why? Because he is precious to us and because we love him. You know, even as I was preparing the sermon and I said, oh Lord, forgive me because I have been busy doing your work, even preaching your word. But when was the last time I truly revered you? When was the last time I regarded you as of utmost importance, as of highest priority, greatest honor in my life? When was the last time I truly treasured you and beheld you as the Lord and my God? And I said, forgive me, oh God. And in the days to come, as I began to reflect on this, and I said, God, I want to revere you. Help me to revere you. Teach me to revere you and to fear you without being afraid of you. It's a tension. And as I began to say, Lord, I want to revere you, I find that oftentimes the follow-up response that came from my heart was that, Lord, I love you. Lord, I love you. Every time I say, Lord, I want to revere you, I want to honor you, the response was also, Lord, I love you. And I began to realize that honoring and revering and fearing the Lord is actually loving the Lord as well. It's really one and the same thing. You can't love the Lord without revering him. You can't love the Lord without honoring him. You can't love the Lord without holding him in high regard and high esteem. And that is what this verse in Deuteronomy tells us, that we will love the Lord with all our heart and with all our soul, to make him the greatest priority of our lives, to treasure him and to value his words and commands over anything else or anyone else, even your wife. Okay, so in fact, Psalmist says in 112:1, blessed are those who fear the Lord, who find great delight in his commands. Now you would think that the word fear and delight would not be in the same sentence, but there it is. And it teaches us that a proper holy fear of the Lord is to delight in obeying the God whom we love. The proper holy fear of the Lord is to delight in obeying the God whom we love. When we fear the Lord, he becomes the treasure of our heart. And so allow me to sum up what we've just discussed. This is not an exhaustive list, but at least we can try to make some sense of what it means to fear the Lord. Give us some handles. Okay? So to fear the Lord is standing in awe of God's greatness, is to be humbled by his goodness, and in delighting him above all else. That is what it means to fear the Lord. Is that okay? So, fathers, the most important thing you can do for your family is to stand in awe of God's greatness, to be humbled by his goodness, and to delight in the Lord above all else. Because when you fear the Lord, when you revere the Lord, when you treasure the Lord, everything else is going to flow from that. Psalms 112 tells us the blessings of fearing the Lord. And it says, when you fear the Lord, your children will be blessed. Verse 2, those who fear the Lord, their children will be mighty in the land, the generation of the upright will be blessed. When you fear the Lord, your household will be blessed. Verse 3, wealth and riches are in their houses, and their righteousness endures forever. When you fear the Lord, hope will shine even during difficult times. Verse 4, even in darkness, light dawns for the upright. When you fear the Lord, God's goodness will follow you. Verse 5, God will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. No, goodness will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. When you fear the Lord, you will fear nothing. Verse 7, they will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. You will have courage, as SPK was talking about, because when you fear the Lord, you fear nothing else. And when you fear the Lord, you leave behind a godly legacy. Verses 6 and 9, surely the righteous will be remembered forever. Their righteousness endures forever. They will be lifted high in honor. In closing, I just want to say this. Dads, fathers, when you fear the Lord, everything else flows from that. There are many things you have to do as a father, many responsibilities, and the world tells you many things that you must do or you must have. Your common sense tells you these are the things that I need to do to provide and to protect for my family. These are the logical things and the steps that I need to do, and rightly so. But Psalms 34:9 tells us, fear the Lord, you his holy people, for those who fear the Lord lack nothing. Fathers, your families will lack for nothing if you fear the Lord. Because before you are called to be a provider or a protector, you are called to be first and foremost a worshiper. And the greatest gift you can give your family, the highest calling in your life, the most enduring legacy that you can leave for your children and their children is to be a man who loves his God, a man who honors his God, a man who walks with his God. And Daniel 11:32 tells us that the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. You want to be strong, fathers. You want to be courageous. You want to be great. You want to do great things for your family. It's not what the world says is greatness. It's not what the world says you must do or must have. But that if you will get on your knees before God and rebuild that altar of worship unto him. And you say, God, I want to revere you. I want to honor you. I want to love you. More than anything, oh Lord, I want to have a holy fear of you once again. And I'll be the first to say, even though I'm not a father yet, I'll be first to say, God, I want to rebuild the altar of worship unto you. That no matter what season I'm in, no matter what circumstance I am, no matter whether you answer my prayers or not, no matter how my life turns out, no matter what season I'm in, now is a season for me to fear you, God. Now it's a season for me to revere you above all else. That you would take the highest place and the highest honor in my life. And the call today is to rebuild that altar of worship unto the Lord. What the world needs are strong fathers who will get on their knees before God. Then they can stand up for their children and for their families and even for their communities. And on every altar, there is always a sacrifice. The fathers, your call today is to come and bring your burdens, your fears, your responsibilities, even your failures before God. You don't have to carry that alone. The call today is to bring your family and your children before God, trusting that he knows and he loves and he cares for them even more than you do. And above all, the call today is to consecrate yourself and to surrender everything unto God once again. What is it that takes utmost priority in your heart? What is it that you hold most important and dear to you, even ahead of God? I want to encourage you to lay it down before the Lord and say, Lord, would you take first place in my heart? Would you be the one that I love the most? Would you be the one that I treasure the most? Would you be the one that I revere the most? Is that okay? As the worship team sings the song, Take My Life and Let It Be, let us respond to the word that has been spoken and allow the Holy Spirit to minister to us.